move into a space where then by probably 2035 we've got 50,000 electric vehicles sold in South Africa from Volkswagen, yes. Because this is what we do with Polo.
This EV deadline. We call it an EV deadline. I suppose it's a zero carbon emissions deadline. And so given that 70% of your vehicles are exported, which makes export then the predominant part of the VW's business, how is VW changing in South Africa in order to adapt to that world that Europe is putting a deadline on, to not lose the 70% of the export?
So one part, and that's the main part of the strategy I'm also trying to accelerate now for VW, is that we want to look more into the African business, Sub-Sahara but also North Africa, to offset potential export losses to Europe whenever they come. And there is that African Continental Free Trade Agreement now, which is coming in place. There is, or I see coming a huge demand for automotive industry, for industrialization in Africa, but also for new vehicles. And also Volkswagen has a very good reputation, although probably only known from, I don't know, newspapers or internet or whatever, and unfortunately some grey car imports in Africa. So that's one of our strategies, to grow in Africa. To offset export losses to Europe. Another thing is that we are looking into an additional product for our Karicha plant around 2026, 2027, to then run 3 products, Polo, Polo Vivo, and the third product to probably even have more market share in South Africa, but it's also a tailor-made product for Africa itself, to then make sure that we fill the 162,000 or 171,000 capacity by then.
I suppose the market forgets about Africa and focuses on this EU deadline, whereas Africa is a big continent and probably not being serviced the way that it could be serviced. And good on VW for seeing the opportunity, because my belief is it's probably going to take 30 years to transition South Africa to an EV market. We just don't have the volume and the car park to transition as quickly as we need to, and the load shedding and power problems. Let's not talk about that. So let's talk about EVs for a second, if you don't mind, Martina. So obviously, in the next year, 2 years, VW is going to bring some EVs to market, the ID.4, I believe, and some others. Those are initially, I assume, going to be imports. But talking about manufacturing EVs, is it a strategy to retool a plant, or does a OEM have to rebuild the plant from scratch?
No, and you can retool the plants. Otherwise, it would be an endeavor, would never be feasible. So the first thing is that we are currently looking into partnering and doing that already with Brazil, the African continent, as South Africa and India, because the speed we develop probably into EVs would be quite similar. That's the current guess. India is now, let's see, probably they're even a bit faster. That first of all gives us a good advantage in terms of also internal combustion engine vehicles, because Latin America is big. They've got their own development, Volkswagen development department. They can do combustion engines, and we can partner with them and probably help them with right-hand drive development, for example. Okay. So that's cool. With them, we are also looking into a really, let's say, global electric vehicle, which is affordable for global markets. And if we find that would then really increase not the demand is there, but customers who could afford an EV in Africa. Or I don't think that it takes that long, like 30 years. I see us potentially building electric vehicles probably 2035.
Okay.
The difficult thing is not getting a technical release and waiting for the budget speech, by the way, this next week, the week after next week, because all manufacturers, we're really looking for an indication now. We've got together with NAMSA, we put a EV white paper together on how to kind of start the journey with import, but also with subsidizing imports of EVs, which will never be a huge amount of vehicles. So like loss of tax revenue is probably not the biggest problem, but to start that journey and to start also building public charging infrastructure, and to also like change the customer behavior surely but slowly, and move into a space where then by probably 2035 we've got 50,000 electric vehicles sold in South Africa from Volkswagen, because this is what we do with Polo Vivo currently. So to make sense from Volkswagen as a company, because many plants in Europe also have not transformed yet into an electric vehicle plant. So would they now look at us saying, okay, you do electric vehicles now and export them to Europe as we do with the Polo? No, they don't, because where do we get the batteries from? Coming with a ship to South Africa, then we produce the vehicle here, then we send the whole vehicle up on a ship. So Volkswagen is currently looking really at the CO2 footprint, not only of the production of the vehicle, but like the whole supply chain. And they would now look first into transforming the European plants. They are all about to be not rebuilt, but really like refurbished or retooled, except the one in Wolfsburg, where we said now we've got that special plant because we want to really be fast in the production. But that's the big investment is not in the plant or retooling the plant, but really in the EV development.
So I mean that's encouraging, and the reason I say 30 years is not that we will be selling 100% EVs within 30 years, but I think it'll take that long for every car that you see on the road to be an EV. Because we've got to move the other cars out of the system. So 50,000 by 2035. You know, for me that sounds like a good thing to shoot for. Talking about EVs, and before we get off that topic, what is VW's outlook on the grid in South Africa given EVs? What is your opinion on the load shedding, and how do we solve this problem?
So now I've got a very strong opinion on load shedding, as I believe every South African as well. Because load shedding, of course, does not help in ICE production. Fortunately, we don't have to load ICE or charge ICEs, but still we have to produce them. So load shedding stage 6 means we'll go in short time.
The plants stop when there's load shedding?
From level 6 onwards, we'll have to stop. We can't, and there's also not really like a short-term solution to go off the grid, like power-intense operations, like for example paint shop, which you can't like run with a kind of, okay, let's have a little generator on site. One midterm probably solution to overcome that in terms of production is the green hydrogen initiative from the government. We see whether that is an option. Kucha is, I think, going big on green hydrogen, which is not too far from our plant, but still 30 kilometers. We've got solar panels on the roofs. We've invested in wind wheeling, but that unfortunately only keeps the lights on and the laptops working. So kind of I'm safe, but unfortunately the car production is not safe with load shedding. And also now when we look at an additional ICE product, as I was alluding to earlier on, and kind of in the global scheme of our 121 plants, my headquarters is looking at kind of, okay, are you able to produce in a stable way? Is the logistics okay? Fortunately, port in Kariga is very good. Transnet to transport vehicles amongst the country, yes, there's challenges as well. So really also not even only for EV, the grid is a challenge, but for us now as a manufacturer, load shedding level 6 upwards is a challenge, and also for our suppliers. And then we come again to that like 4,000 direct employees plus another 30 to 40,000, including suppliers, running on short time or whatever. So that's really an issue. We're looking into more on the EV side into energy storage solutions. So we've just like built our first flex pole charger in the plant to show that it's kind of working, and that these chargers can store energy for vehicles like for 48 hours. You could constantly charge vehicles. You could also run a complex with it, with these flex pole chargers. And for the second generation, and we've just started the discussion with our German PowerCo team, it would be great if these can also feed back to the grid, not only charge vehicles, but feed back to the grid, because that would probably even be earlier adopted than electric vehicles, because then we've got you can run your complex power, with load shedding. So we kind of, and that's also part of, or fun part of that story, to look left and right on what else, because I think in the midterm we also must at least think of something like battery assembly in South Africa or somewhere in Africa.
Yes.
Ideally battery manufacturing, which, because all the raw material is here, but the processing unfortunately happens then in China.
Well, I mean, it feels to me like as a country we've got the raw materials. We export it, we sell it to these people overseas. They manufacture the battery, and then we import it, paying their profits.
Exactly.
And then we use it in South Africa. It's almost like it's a no-brainer to assemble the batteries in the country, or in the continent at least.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, that makes me kind of optimistic that if somebody can come along and really at scale assemble batteries, not even necessarily produce them, but at least assemble them,
would be good.
You know, that would be a first step.
Yeah, that's also like what we're looking in, but also therefore you need more volume. Even if I would have 162 Volkswagen vehicles, EVs only produced in that plant, that's for a battery factory, that's again too small. So the smallest size currently of one of our gigafactories is 300,000. So, but then this energy storage solutions and chargers help, because you also you add that to the volume you produce for the vehicles.
Yes.
But yeah.